The rain lashed Seoul with an almost symbolic intensity, as if the sky were determined to wash away any trace of hope from that night. The glass of the hospital reception area vibrated under the impact of the raindrops, and the cold air carried a metallic smell that mixed sterility, despair, and abandonment. Han Soo-jin was kneeling on the floor, her knees pressed against the icy surface, while her hands trembled as she held a crumpled test result. That piece of paper carried 3 lines of heartbeats, 3 pulses that signified 3 lives. Triplets, the achievement that for years seemed unattainable. The dream that should have been celebrated with laughter and promises was being crushed there, under fluorescent lights and gazes that pretended not to see. Her body trembled, not only from the temperature, but from the presence before her. Lee Min-seok, the man to whom she had given her best years, observed the exam with disdain, as if he were not witnessing a miracle, but a problem. He held the paper between his fingers, as if holding something contaminated, and with a cold voice, forged by years of pride, uttered words that pierced Soo-jin's soul like blades. He said that this couldn't be true, that she was sterile, that the doctors had already confirmed it. For him, that result didn't mean life, it meant a threat. Before she could explain what she felt, before she could share the joy she carried in her womb, Min-seok tore the exam into several pieces that floated across the floor like dirty snow carried by the air current of the corridor. Each fragment that fell seemed to tear a piece of Soo-jin's dignity from her. His voice didn't need to rise. The coldness was enough to paralyze any reaction. He said she was trying to trap him, that the marriage was dead, that she could never offer anything but disappointment. And then, as if the universe were determined to witness his complete humiliation, a woman approached, elegant, confident, with expensive perfume that filled the air. Hana, the mistress. She handed the blazer to Min-seok with the naturalness of someone who already occupies a place that shouldn't be hers, and with a triumphant smile said it was time to go. He simply nodded, turned his back, and said the phrase that extinguished any trace of life in Soo-jin's eyes, that she had nothing to offer and never would. When she tried to stand, her legs gave way. The nurse rushed to her, picked up one of the torn pieces, and noticed the 3 heart rate monitors. 3 lives, 3 destinies. Soo-jin's consciousness faded the instant Min-seok's car disappeared in the rain, as if he were cleansing the past while the future grew within her. But fate has a silent way of returning all that is done in darkness. If Min-seok destroyed her love that night, is he prepared for the moment when those 3 hearts will grow up to destroy his world? If this story touched you and you want to follow every twist and turn, subscribe to the channel now. Leave a like and stay with us. The best and most unexpected is yet to come. The following day dawned with a cold light streaming through the glass windows of the highest office in the MSK Holdings building, where Lee Min-seok reigned as if he owned not only the company, but also time and people. His world revolved around charts on enormous screens, contracts scattered across marble desks, and employees who bowed whenever he passed. The routine followed a perfect choreography, coffee served at the exact temperature, meetings where his voice was the last to be heard, and glances that mixed fear and admiration. For him, control was a language, and being obeyed was the least he expected. Meanwhile, on the opposite side of the city, Han Soo-jin awoke in a small apartment in Mapogu, where the sounds of the street mingled with the chants of street vendors and the aroma of coffee she brewed herself. Her world had no bulletproof glass, private drivers, or schedules organized for her. It was simple, with the smell of soap in the sink and a small wooden table where she wrote encouraging notes for the children at the NGO where she worked. Her kindness wasn't forced. It was how she saw the world. She truly believed that love could heal. The contrast between the two was almost offensive. While Min-seok trampled on feelings to climb each rung of power, Soo-jin believed that every person she met needed to leave better than they arrived. She was driven by the desire to care. He by the desire to be admired. They lived in the same marriage, but inhabited completely different universes. In the office, Min-seok was speaking on the phone with investors, using words such as aggressive expansion, increased participation, and market dominance. Each syllable revealed the kind of man he was, someone who confused ambition with self-worth. The mirrored walls reflected his impeccable image, his perfectly styled haircut, and the watch that cost more than Soo-jin's entire annual salary. Meanwhile, she was arranging donation boxes at the NGO, smiling at shy elderly people who arrived, offering hot tea to those who were tired. Each small gesture seemed to awaken in her a strength he had never been able to see. It wasn't weakness, it was character. On the rare occasions when Soo-jin appeared at the company to bring the lunch she prepared for her husband, some employees observed her with a mixture of pity and disbelief. They couldn't understand how such a sweet woman survived in an environment where the heart was always the first thing to be sacrificed. For her, love had been a choice. For him, it had always been just convenience. And although she didn't know it yet, in that moment when she was paying attention to people no one else noticed, something was silently beginning to change. It was as if the universe was noting every tear, every rejection, every humiliation. Because unlike Min-seok, fate never wastes the suffering of those who loved purely. Soo-jin's life was about to change forever, not because she had lost everything, but because Min-seok's dirtiest secret was about to come to light. And when the truth about a proud man comes to light, no one is prepared to deal with the price that comes with that revelation. While Soo-jin was reorganizing donations at the NGO, unaware that her life had been thrown off balance, Min-seok was in another part of the city, sitting in a private room in a luxurious clinic. The atmosphere lacked the metallic smell typical of ordinary hospitals. Instead, the fragrance was of imported exotic flowers placed to soften the coldness of calculated decisions. Before him, a doctor leafed through a medical record that should never have been opened, much less manipulated. The lights reflected off the metal of the stethoscope, and the air conditioning made the room as cold as the conscience of the man who would receive those words. "So it's confirmed?" Min-seok asked, with the impatience of someone who isn't looking for answers, only confirmation of what he wants to hear. The doctor hesitated for a moment, like someone who knows he is overstepping ethical boundaries, but has already sold his soul and can no longer go back. Yes, she is infertile. The word echoed in the room with the weight of a sentence, but it wasn't true. The doctor knew it, just as Min-seok knew it too, even though he tried to bury the garment in the deepest layers of his arrogance. Sterility, if it existed, wasn't in Soo-jin. It was in him. In the tests that should never have been revealed, in the hidden shame of a man who always saw himself as too perfect to admit any imperfection. Min-seok took the envelope and put it in his blazer pocket with the same nonchalance with which he signed multi-million-dollar contracts. For him, that falsified document was more than a lie. It was a passport to a new life alongside Hana, the lover who knew how to manipulate his vanity with the skill of someone who understands that ego is a much stronger leash than love. In the underground parking lot, Hana awaited him inside an imported car. Her red dress seemed a deliberate reminder of everything Soo-jin had never been in his eyes. Bold, provocative, strategically seductive. When Min-seok entered, she brought her face close to his and asked in a voice full of sugary venom, "We achieved." He nodded, a victorious smile spreading across his face, as if he had defeated not a woman, but an obstacle in his path to advancement. She will believe it, and when she believes it, she will give up. Hana cupped his face in her long, calculated fingers. You deserve someone who is your equal, not a woman who traps you in mediocrity. Neither of them realized that in trying to get rid of a woman who only offered love, they were signing the beginning of their own end. Because destiny may take its time, but it never fails. And while the couple celebrated their dirty victory, something unexpected happened at that very moment. Soo-jin discovered something that would make it impossible to hide the truth forever. And when a wounded woman discovers she carries 3 lives within her, it's not she who needs to fear, but rather those who hurt her. The days following her hospital stay dragged on like a heavy, slow, and suffocating eternity, bringing with them the feeling that time had become an invisible enemy, pressing down on Soo-jin's chest every second. The apartment, once filled with small gestures of love that she insisted on cultivating, the jasmine tea in the late afternoon, the candles lit at the entrance so that Min-seok's return would always seem welcoming, the notes left inside his briefcase with affectionate reminders, was now overrun with boxes and the cold presence of 2 lawyers collecting belongings with the efficiency of someone performing an impersonal task. They packed everything without ever looking her in the eye, as if Soo-jin wasn't losing an entire life, but merely returning something that never belonged to her. As she folded her own clothes to pack them into a small suitcase, Soo-jin tried to understand at what point the marriage ceased to be a home and transformed into a silent, emotional prison, built with crumbs of indifference and broken promises. When the lawyers placed a pre-prepared divorce contract on the living room table, the cold morning light reflected directly on the word that ended her story. She felt the weight of that moment coursing through her entire body, because signing meant accepting the distorted version that Min-seok had spread about her. It meant allowing the world to believe that she was barren and inadequate. It meant acknowledging that she had lost not only her husband, but herself. Her hands trembled as she signed, feeling something inside her break definitively. Min-seok entered shortly after, checked the signature without looking at her face, and with the coldness of someone closing a business contract, wished she would do something useful with her life. When he left, taking with him the last vestige of dignity he had tried to wrest from her, Soo-jin walked to the elevator with only a suitcase and an envelope. The world spun, and her body gave way. Hours later, she woke up again in the hospital, but this time the nurse was holding an ultrasound and a surprising smile. 3 heartbeats, 3 lives, 3 strong hearts. And within her, something was born that Min-seok could never destroy: the courage to start over. When she was discharged from the hospital, Soo-jin walked down the street, feeling the cold wind touch her face as if she were crossing an invisible threshold between who she had been and who she was about to become. No one was waiting for her at the exit anymore. No outstretched hand, no voice offering support. Carrying a small backpack and the envelope containing the ultrasound images of the 3 beating hearts, she boarded a bus, her gaze lost out the window, watching the city recede. Each building that disappeared behind her seemed to take away a piece of the life she had sustained until then. It was as if Seoul, with all its coldness and haste, was finally allowing her to vanish without a trace. As soon as the bus crossed the bridge separating the busiest districts, Soo-jin made a silent decision. She wouldn't return to that world. She wouldn't look for Min-seok. She wouldn't ask for explanations. She wouldn't beg for love where only contempt existed. Instead, she would go to the only place. She never thought of hiding Busan. That destination had emerged like a silent calling when the nurse, with a more compassionate look than anyone she had met in recent months, wrote an address on a piece of paper and handed it to her firmly. "My family runs a small community clinic in Busan. If you need help, go there. You don't deserve to face this alone. The train to Busan took 3 hours, enough time for thoughts to try and drag her back to the past. Each memory came like a blow, but all it took was looking at the ultrasound in her hands for something inside her to reorganize itself. Those babies weren't just children, they were living proof that the truth always finds a way, even when they try to bury it under lies. When she arrived, she was greeted by the nurse's family with a kindness that seemed improbable given the emotionally devastated world she had just left behind. They gave her a simple room, a hot meal, and, for the first time in a long time, silence without judgment. There, in that place far from the gazes that had hurt her, Soo-jin began to be reborn, not out of revenge, but out of the promise to protect what no one could take from her, her children and her dignity. While Soo-jin faded from the map and silently rebuilt her strength, Min-seok's life began to be swallowed by the same emptiness he had left in her. Fate was already preparing its first blow, and he had no idea. 6 months had passed since Soo-jin disappeared from Seoul as if erasing her own existence, and Min-seok, contrary to his expectations, was not living the perfect life he had imagined after getting rid of his wife. The initial euphoria of being with Hana was transforming into a silent, almost imperceptible discomfort that seeped into his routine like a crack that starts small but has the power to bring down an entire structure. His mistress, once so dedicated and captivating, now demanded more than just her presence. He wanted status, trips, visibility, photos of her with him at business events. What seemed like freedom to Min-seok began to become a new prison, more sophisticated and even more suffocating. At the company, the air felt heavy. Some key investors began to question decisions that had previously been accepted without resistance. 2 international contracts were cancelled without concrete explanations, and rumors began to circulate through the corridors. Employees avoided eye contact, and meetings that had once been decided in minutes dragged on with intense debates, as if each person had finally found the courage to challenge the CEO's absolute authority. There was something different in the atmosphere, something intangible, but impossible to ignore, the feeling that the empire was beginning to crumble. Min-seok tried to ignore the signs, believing it was all part of the natural fluctuations of a competitive market. However, on one particular night, a situation shook his convictions. He was in a closed meeting when the CFO asked him to analyze a news report that had just gone viral. MSK Holdings investigated for manipulation of contracts and internal information. It was only the beginning, but the article insinuated that the problem stemmed from the chairmanship. Even without mentioning Min-seok's name, the attack was as direct as an arrow launched against the reputation he had so painstakingly built. He left the meeting with his heart pounding, as if he were being watched from all sides. He called Hana to find some emotional relief, but upon arriving at the upscale restaurant where she was, he found a scene that chilled his blood. Hana was laughing with another executive, younger, more influential, more ambitious. When she realized he was there, she simply smiled, leaning closer to the new man as if announcing without words that she had already found something more advantageous. From that moment on, Min-seok felt the world slipping away beneath his feet. He lost investors, he lost the support of his team, and without realizing it, he was beginning to lose something even more valuable, the control he had always believed he possessed. For the first time in his life, he discovered the bitter taste of abandonment, rejection, and humiliation, exactly the same ingredients of suffering that he had served to Soo-jin. Karma hadn't just knocked on the door, it had come in, sat down, and was determined to stay. The universe had begun to exact a price for every tear Soo-jin had shed, but the most devastating blow was yet to come, because fate was preparing the moment when he would see with his own eyes what he had deemed impossible. Her return, transformed. 2 years had passed since the divorce. In Busan during that time, Soo-jin had learned to rebuild her own identity, and the days that were once marked by the absence of love became filled with small, silent victories. She studied business administration, completed courses, learned to negotiate with suppliers, and gradually began working as a volunteer consultant on small projects. Her intelligence, which had previously been stifled by the suffocating presence of her ex-husband, blossomed like a seed that had finally found fertile ground. Caring for the triplets required strength, but it was precisely that responsibility that made her discover the extent of her potential. Each of their smiles was a reminder that she had overcome what had tried to destroy her. While Soo-jin grew up quietly in Seoul, Min-seok was engulfed by a succession of failures. With each meeting where an investor withdrew their support, with each headline scrolling across his phone screen, his countenance lost a bit of the arrogance that had once sustained his empire. He watched helplessly as the public image he had so proudly built crumbled before his eyes. He had tried to disguise the decline by buying more expensive watches and showing off new cars, but nothing seemed to fill the growing void that consumed him. Soo-jin's absence was never mentioned, but it was always there, like a silent shadow reminding him of the choice he had made. When MSK Holdings announced the biggest corporate event of the year, a launch to attract new strategic investors, Min-seok decided that this would be the moment to prove to the world that he was still in control. The team prepared everything: a luxurious hall, impeccable lighting, invited journalists. He entered the stage with his practiced smile and prepared speech, certain that he would regain his dignity that night. However, fate had other plans. Half the hall was filled with elite Korean businessmen, cameras capturing every detail. Just before Min-seok began his presentation, the lights dimmed and the master of ceremonies, in a firm and animated voice, announced an unexpected guest. "Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the new Director of Expansion at K Group International, the woman responsible for the biggest market growth in the last 18 months, Han Soo-jin." The name rippled through the hall like an electric wave. Min-seok froze. His eyes widened, searching perhaps for another person with the same name. But then the double doors at the back of the auditorium opened, and the world seemed to stop. Soo-jin entered with a firm posture, wearing a light-colored suit that reflected the light elegantly. Her hair was styled in an impeccable bun, highlighting her serene face. Around her, 3 children walked with confident steps, hand in hand, dressed discreetly, but sophisticatedly. Each of them wore a name tag with the surname of the international company. The pressure in Min-seok's chest turned to panic. Soo-jin walked toward him, but her eyes didn't seek his face. She walked like someone who finally knew who she was. There was no hatred, no anger, only a quiet, devastating strength. The entire room rose to its feet in applause. She was no longer the humiliated woman on a hospital floor. She was a leader, a symbol of rebirth, a threat. Min-seok felt the air leave his lungs, as if the past had just walked through the door to remind him of everything he had tried to erase. He tried to approach, thinking he might still have some control, but when she finally looked at him, her eyes carried a silent message. "I didn't come back for you. I came back for myself." And at that moment, Min-seok realized something that made him shudder. Those 3 children were not just a part of the past he had tried to destroy. They were exactly what he had always believed he was incapable of achieving, and that would put his reputation at risk in the eyes of the entire world. As soon as the applause subsided and the event resumed its natural flow of presentations, Min-seok couldn't take his eyes off Soo-jin. Everything about him seemed to be slipping out of his control. His accelerated breathing, his sweaty palms, the thought that kept returning to the moment he left her kneeling on the floor of a hospital. The image of her with those 3 children by her side wouldn't leave his mind. It was living proof that his castle of lies was about to crumble. During the cocktail party, he observed her from afar, surrounded by businessmen, her words firm and confident, laughing discreetly as she spoke of international expansion strategies. She was light where before he had only seen shadow. When the opportunity arose, Min-seok walked toward her with tense steps, like someone trying to retrieve something that slipped through their fingers. With each step, he became more aware of the weight of guilt, but also of his wounded vanity. Finally, he approached and spoke her name, trying to use the same confidence that had always characterized him. Soo-jin, can we talk? She turned her face slowly, as if consciously choosing to give attention to something that didn't deserve priority. And the silence that settled between them was so dense that it seemed to drown out the sound of the entire room. Soo-jin didn't smile, didn't show anger. She just kept her gaze steady, like someone who had finally discovered her own worth. I believe we have nothing to discuss, Min-seok, she said, with a calmness that completely disarmed him. He tried to regain his composure, but his voice came out almost as a plea. Those children, are they mine? For a moment, Soo-jin's eyes softened at the thought of the 3 little ones, but they quickly regained their firmness. She approached slowly, maintaining just enough distance so that no one around would realize that this conversation carried more history than any speech that night. You lost the right to ask that question the day you left me alone, believing a lie you yourself invented, she replied, and each word fell upon him with the weight of the tears she had shed. Min-seok tried to touch her arm, but she recoiled gracefully, as if she had built barriers he would never cross again. I just want to understand, he insisted. Soo-jin took a deep breath and said in a low voice, but sharp as glass, you only want to understand what feeds your ego. What I've built isn't about you. It never will be again. Then she walked away without looking back, leaving him standing among people who had no idea that, at that very moment, they were witnessing the beginning of the downfall of a man who believed he would never lose anything. That phrase would echo in Min-seok's mind for days to come. But the worst was yet to come. Because he, consumed by the obsession to prove his version of events, would commit the fatal mistake that would ultimately destroy everything he had left. The days that followed the event were a silent torment within Min-seok, who now lived tormented by questions he never imagined he would have to face. Every night, he relived the image of Soo-jin crossing the hall with the triplets by her side, and every detail of that scene seemed like a blow to the pride that had always kept him above any emotional responsibility. The obsession grew to the point that he began to secretly investigate her life, scouring records, searching for information about K-Group International, and trying to understand how that woman, whom he believed to be fragile and submissive, had become such an influential and respected figure in the market. On one of those sleepless nights, he murmured to himself, gripping the steering wheel of his car while the company parking lot remained empty. If those children are mine, my reputation will be threatened, and that can't happen, making it clear to himself that it wasn't love or regret that drove him, but rather the panic of having his public image destroyed by a truth he had tried to bury. Driven by the arrogance that still blinded him, Min-seok filed a lawsuit requesting a DNA test without even informing Soo-jin. For him, it was enough to use the law as a tool to regain control, as he had always done with everything and everyone in his life. When the document reached her hands, Soo-jin felt the past trying to drag her back to that place of pain. But she took a deep breath and realized that the woman he thought he could manipulate had been buried along with the tears she had shed on the floor of that hospital 2 years before. Instead of fear, she felt a profound serenity as she handed him what he himself had asked for, the scientific evidence that would reveal who truly carried the inability to have children. Without expression, she entered the clinic accompanied by her children, and throughout the procedure she remained silent, holding each child's hand with the confidence of someone who already knows that the truth has its own time to emerge. While the test was being done, Min-seok was in another room, anxious, internally repeating that all of this was just a protocol to expose her lie, without imagining that he was the one who would be exposed. When the results were ready, the doctor adjusted his glasses, carefully opened the envelope, and read the contents in a neutral yet incisive voice. He said that the children had no genetic link to Min-seok, and concluded with a heavy look that the tests revealed something more serious. The analysis points to male infertility of genetic origin. You have never had reproductive capacity throughout your life. The room fell silent. Min-seok felt his body freeze, as if the ground had given way beneath his feet. There was no way to escape, deny, manipulate, or distort that truth, because everything there was documented with the irrefutable weight of science. Soo-jin, for her part, simply took a deep breath and said within the same paragraph, without raising her voice or showing resentment, that the truth always returns, and when it arrives, it tears away everything that the lie tried to protect. The news leaked inexplicably quickly. In less than 24 hours, headlines exploded on financial portals, describing the CEO of MSK Holdings as someone who fabricated his wife's infertility to justify a divorce and conceal his own incompetence. Investors immediately broke contracts. Employees resigned. Hannah disappeared without a trace, as if she had never existed. And Min-seok, now alone in his empty office, stared at his own reflection in the glass and finally understood that he was not facing a business failure, but rather the ruin of someone who had chosen ego as his priority. In the depths of that devastating silence, something unexpected began to grow within him, not as redemption, but as despair. For Min-seok realized he had lost everything except one last thing, the chance to ask for forgiveness, and that would lead him directly to the most painful encounter of his life. Min-seok's public downfall was like an avalanche that destroyed everything that had previously seemed solid, and overnight he went from a feared man to someone no one wanted to associate their name with. The company removed him from his position, investors broke contracts, and employees avoided crossing paths with him in the hallways, as if his presence meant participating in the scandal. The solitude that had once been a choice had now become a sentence. Not knowing where to find any meaning in the chaos he himself had created, Min-seok decided to follow the only path he had never considered, to meet Soo-jin, not as a husband nor as CEO, but as someone who needed to say what he had avoided for so long. He looked up the address of the NGO where she worked in Busan and took the first train he found, keeping his gaze lost out the window for the entire journey, watching the landscape pass by as a metaphor for the life slipping through his fingers. When he arrived, he was dressed simply, without a suit, without the watch that symbolized his status, and without anything that could serve as emotional armor, just him, carrying the weight of everything he had done. Soo-jin was organizing food baskets when she saw him standing in the doorway. For a moment, time seemed to stand still. She showed no surprise, only took a deep breath and waited for him to speak. Min-seok took a few hesitant steps and with a choked voice confessed in a single long paragraph that he had been driven by pride, that he feared his infertility would ruin his image, and that out of cowardice, he had destroyed her life. He said he hadn't returned to ask for anything, but to give back what he had taken from her. the truth. With teary eyes, he added that some people only understand the value of what they had when they realize they have lost something irreversible. Soo-jin didn't cry. She looked at him with the maturity of someone who had already crossed the valley of pain and found her own strength on the other side. She said, still within the same paragraph, that she no longer held a grudge because she had decided not to carry a burden that wasn't hers. She added that forgiving isn't about reconciliation. Forgiving is about freeing yourself from what they tried to attach to you. And at that moment, the silence between them had more power than any argument. Min-seok lowered his head, understanding that her forgiveness wasn't an invitation to return, but the final door that closed the past. When Soo-jin walked away, she didn't realize that that moment would become the exact point where fate would show that life still held one last revelation, something capable of changing not only the end of the story, but the meaning of everything they had lived through. After that silent meeting at the NGO, Soo-jin went for a walk with her children along the Busan waterfront. The wind blew gently, swaying the colorful umbrellas the children carried, and the late afternoon light reflected on the sea, creating a golden glow that seemed to announce a new chapter. As the little ones ran ahead, laughing and competing to see who could jump over the small puddles left by the rain, Soo-jin watched each movement as if mentally filming that moment, recording not only their joy but also the rebirth that had taken place within her. For the first time in a long time, her chest held no pain, only a profound sense of peace. It was at that moment that she realized that forgiveness was not a gift for the one who hurt her, but rather the moment when she finally gave herself back the right to live without chains. She remembered the situation where Min-seok tore up the exam at the hospital and felt that that version of herself was as distant as another universe. That woman kneeling on the floor no longer existed. In her place was someone who had learned the hard way that no love requires you to diminish yourself, and that whoever tries to extinguish your light only reveals their own emptiness. As she thought, one of the children ran back and held her hand tightly, asking if they could buy ice cream before going home. And Soo-jin smiled, replying within the same paragraph that there is nothing more powerful than realizing that the love they tried to deny has blossomed even stronger. As they continued walking, the scene resembled a living painting. 3 children running with umbrellas that waved like small victory flags, and in the background, the sunset dissolving the past into the infinite line of the horizon. Soo-jin took a deep breath and understood that even if life isn't always fair, it is perfectly precise when it comes to returning to the heart what has been taken from it. In that moment of serenity, while she believed that everything had finally ended, life was about to show her. And that fate had not yet revealed its last card. When she arrived home that night, Soo-jin watched her children sleeping soundly, each clutching their favorite toy. Their peaceful breathing filled the room with a gentle rhythm, and for a few moments she stood there in the doorway, feeling the weight of the meaningful silence that only exists after a long inner war comes to an end. Their small hands, relaxed on the sheets, seemed to carry the perfect symbol of everything she had conquered. Not victory over someone, but victory over pain. It was in these small details that she realized that life, despite breaking, also mends, and that no wound is too deep when there is love to sustain it. As she gently stroked one of the boy's hair, she understood that she never needed to prove her worth to anyone, especially not to someone who never saw the greatness within her, and she closed her eyes for a few seconds, as if giving thanks for having survived. That same night, sitting at the kitchen table with a steaming cup of tea in her hands, Soo-jin looked out the window and saw the reflection of a woman she didn't recognize, but in the best possible way. It wasn't the woman crushed by rejection, nor the one who begged for love, but someone who had discovered that dignity is the greatest asset a person can preserve. She thought of Min-seok for a few seconds, not with pain, but with the compassion of someone who finally understands that certain hearts only learn after they lose everything. At that moment, she realized that life had never been about revenge, but about liberation. With a deep sigh, she left the past there, outside the window, and returned her focus to the cup of tea warming her hands. As she turned off the lights to sleep, she felt a quiet relief embrace her chest. It was the kind of peace that cannot be bought, begged for, or conquered with power. It was the kind of peace that comes when we finally choose ourselves. And if there is one undeniable truth in this story, it is that no one can extinguish what was born to shine, because destiny always takes care of returning to each person exactly what they gave to the world. If you believe that fate exacts a price for every tear and rewards every heart that remains pure, sign up now and follow the next story. Here, no pain is ignored and no ending is erased, because every tear has a purpose and every truth finds its way.